Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer, Tucker Sennett, joining you here today to talk about a jam-packed 48 hours for NC State basketball. We had men's and women's basketball in action here on campus in Raleigh, and of course, over at the Lenovo Center with the women's basketball team taking on Maine in their home opener, getting a win after that 1-1 week in those ranked games against Tennessee and USC. They bounced back with a 66-47 win over Maine, which I'll break down for you all. And then we'll dive into the men's team's lone affair this week, a Wednesday night matchup against UNC Greensboro at the Lenovo Center that the Wolfpack won 110 to 64. So let's start on the women's side. NC State came into this game coming off that loss to USC on Sunday out in Charlotte. Obviously a disappointing effort, but had an opportunity to come back and sort of recover nicely. And things didn't start very well for this NC State team. It was a pretty ugly opening to the game. The first quarter, the score was 5-9, so not exactly what you would have wanted if you're Wes Moore. He wasn't thrilled with the start after the game. Still thinks this team has a lot to work on. A lot of problems still persisting for NC State. The Wolfpack made just three threes in this game, 3 for 20 from downtown. They did improve at the free throw line, shot 9 of 11, held Maine to just 47 points, and they really were dominating them through most of the game until a 20-point fourth quarter with a lot of the, younger players getting extended minutes for the Wolfpack. So, they held Maine to 5 points in the first quarter, 9 points in the second quarter, 13 points in the third quarter, and then they had a 20-point fourth quarter. So pretty steady defense in that sense. Obviously, this Maine team was pretty overmatched at times. So um, you can take any sort of defensive progress with a grain of salt in this one because the tests are going to be much greater over the rest of the season, and those tests continue on Sunday as TCU, number 17 in the country, is coming to town. That'll be another ranked matchup, 3 out of 4 for the Wolfpack. So they'll need to button things up before then. As for the individual performances, Camille Pierre bounced back really nicely after a tough shooting performance against USC. Against Maine, she scored 18 on 8 of 14 shooting, had another double-double, made both of her free throws. She's starting to figure things out, still kind of learning the system. Then Zoe Brooks also had a very nice outing, 14 points on 4 of 8 shooting, 9 rebounds. And then Zam Jones added a 10-point, 5 assist night in this one. The assists are kind of concerning for this NC State team. It seems like they're playing a lot of one-on-one. Wes Moore talked about that after the game, and even the players are kind of aware of this and are trying to fix it. And some of that's just chemistry, learning to play together, learning to play in new roles that these players weren't familiar with last season because most of the production is gone. It's in the WNBA now between Sanaya Rivers and um, yeah, but this team needs to figure out ways to pass the ball more effectively. They did score the paint, or they did score the ball in the paint um, effectively. They scored 42 points in this game, but Tilda Trigger needs to be more involved moving forward. And TCU will be a major test for her. They have a lot of size, so they'll need to find ways to use her efficiency down low and get her more involved in the offense because 6 points and 6 rebounds, that's not going to get this team very far come March. So. As for the men's game, we'll move on to the Wednesday action against UNC Greensboro. There were a lot of fireworks in this one. I've covered it pretty thoroughly with the written content, but the night was about the ejection of Trey Holloman almost less than 5 minutes into the game. Um, Big scuffle. I'll have an article kind of breaking down what went down there coming out this afternoon. So you can see more on there. But I think the main storylines from this game were Darian Williams and Paul McNeil putting together career performances with 32 points for Williams and 27 points for McNeil. Darian Williams, they each made six three-pointers. Darian made six of his eight. McNeil made six of his 13. And that accounted for 12 of the 16 makes from beyond the arc. So a really, really dominant performance from those two. Copeland bounced back from the ugly turnover showing Will Wade was happy with that. 6 assists to zero turnovers. The Wolfpack had just four turnovers in the game. So a much improved outcome in that sense. And some of those turnovers came, down the stretch a little bit. But NC State scored 63 points in the second half against this UNC Greensboro team. They figured things out. They went to the locker room. They made the adjustments they needed to make. Darian Williams was just absolutely electric in the second half, scored 22 of his 32 in that period. And, he looks to be everything that this team wanted when they went out and got him. Um, that's really important for NC State. But this was a really, in Will Wade's words, disjointed game. Tons of fouls in this one. It was really ugly with the fight and everything that happened with Holloman. And it's a good test of how this team can handle a game like that where outside factors are having a major impact on the flow of the game, and NC State just kind of found a way to grind offensively and made it work, and ultimately got the job done in emphatic fashion. They've now scored over 100 in two of their first three games. They're one of the best offensive efficiency teams in the NCAA. So they're cruising. They're off to a really strong start, but the schedule gets tough. The tests are about to come. They got VCU on Monday, then you got the trip to Maui after that, and that's going to be probably some power conference games. And then you come back and you go play Auburn. So the Wolfpack handled the part of its schedule that it needs to handle. Wade is pretty anal about the metrics. There's some areas where he wants to improve because he knows that everything matters, and that kind of stuff can affect where you're seated come March. And if this team has aspirations, it wants every advantage possible in terms of getting to March and then winning in March. So they're paying attention to all that stuff. They're trying to make sure that they win these games that they need to win by as many points as they can. Obviously scored 110 points and won by 46 last night, so did their job that way. But defensively, not the ideal performance that he wants from his team. And this team does have some defensive deficiencies. They're struggling to they improved greatly defending the points in the paint. However, struggled to defend without fouling. Part of that was some questionable officiating, some really, really ridiculous officiating at times, and that's a conversation for another time. But when there's over 40 fouls in a game and over 60 free throws taken, typically the officiating crew is making a little bit too large of an impact on the game. And that didn't favor NC State at all. Greensboro shot 41 free throws to NC State's 23. They didn't make very many of them. And had they made more of them, it might have been, a little bit more competitive, but they didn't. Greensboro turned the ball over 16 times. NC State scored 22 points off of those turnovers, so they improved in that area as well. The rebounding wasn't perfect, but Darian Williams really stepped up to the plate there, finished with a double-double as he had 10 rebounds. Um, was able to make an impact on the glass, especially on the defensive end, with nine of those coming on the defensive end. But yeah, I think if I haven't mentioned it already, Alan Breed stepping up and playing for Trey Holloman was a major storyline. And I was getting there earlier, but this is a guy who had a pretty horrific knee injury at McNeese. That was his second school after he went to Providence and had hopes of being kind of their guy, and it just didn't work out. Went to go play for Wade at McNeese, looked really, really good in his first two games, and then had a horrible injury and missed the entire season. And Wade said last night, to see him be able to go out there and be an effective player with 4 points and 4 assists and 4 rebounds in this one, after there were doctors down there at McNeese telling him he might never play again. So to see him go out there and be an effective rotational piece for this NC State team is really promising because this is a guy that I think after the first two games, you wouldn't have expected to be in the mix per se. And I think he certainly is a guy that they'll have to consider in some of these moments where they need a depth option, foul trouble, etc., because he's played a lot of college basketball. He kind of knows what his role is, and that's really valuable. He's a fairly humble guy, and he just wants to play. He's hungry, and if he gets those opportunities like last night, he takes advantage of them. That was evident, and that was a really promising development for this NC State team. He played 25 minutes after, missing a whole year, and kind of looked a little bit deer in the headlights when he first came in, and then really, really settled in, kind of changed the pace, settled things down in a different way than say Copeland and Holloman play, because they can be high octane, trying to make plays in transition, trying to push the ball, and he's very different. That's not really how he operates. So certainly a development there for NC State moving forward. And then the last guy I want to point out was Musa Sanya, who continues to play himself into the rotation. He is going to be the key for this team if they want to compete for one of those top four spots in the ACC. Um, he is the size, he is the enforcer inside, he is the paint protector that this team needed. If they didn't have him, I would have some concerns because it's a lot to put on Van Allen Lubin's plate to be 6'7", 6'8", and be the number one option down low, or the only option really. And to have Sonya come in with that professional experience goes a long way. And he scored 6 points and hauled in 7 rebounds last night. Um, Hauled in 4 on the offensive side, so pretty solid performance there. It's just going to take time with him. He's a raw project in terms of playing American basketball. The physicality is different in FIBA, so they're working on that with him. But I expect him to continue to be a very effective part of this team moving forward. They got to make sure he's not over fouling and find ways to get him minutes when Ven needs a blow or when this team needs that interior presence that it's sometimes lacking with the starting lineup. That's all I got on these two games. A lot more to come this week as we got a women's game on Sunday, and then of course the gridiron action on Saturday in Miami as CJ Bailey and the Wolfpack take on the Hurricanes. That'll be an exciting affair, and we'll have coverage for you right here on NC State on SI. As always, if you want all of that coverage and then some, you can go ahead and follow me on social media at Sennett Tucker on X. You can follow the website's X account at Wolfpack on SI, and of course, subscribe to the Sports Videos on SI YouTube channel for daily episodes of the NC State Insider Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next time.